Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. As always, I'm Bryson Carver, and thankfully this episode, my microphone is turned on today, so that's good. But last episode's past Friday, it was going totally bonkers. That was on me. But it's great to have you in today on this Monday evening. I've got my Boston Red Sox hat on, of course, repping the 2018 World Champion Red Sox on my T-shirt. 2 straight W's against the big bad New York Yankees. Has me thinking about maybe some success in October. We'll see what happens. We'll definitely get in the postseason. There's no question about that. But we're not going to talk a ton of baseball today, but we do have a great show for y'all tonight. Russell Wilson, the Denver Broncos. I'll give you my full expectations after, about 4 months after the trade was made for Russ. Hint, hint, I really like Denver this year, and I'll tell you how much I like them later in the show, as well as Damian Lillard staying with the Portland Trailblazers. The news of him signing that big contract broke during, I think it was either the Thursday or Friday show last week. I'll get into that, as well as my top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. You're not going to want to miss that. This is the 3rd straight year that I've done such list. Some things are going to stay kind of the same, in terms of my rankings, but other things are going to change drastically. I'll get into that. And then as well as Ja Morant. Man, this young cat's all going wild. He's talking wild right now. I'll talk about that later in the show. But first, I want to talk about Baker Mayfield. Baker disaster maker, as I dubbed him the other day. They call him Baker touchdown maker when he was in college at Oklahoma, and that was a fair nickname because that was the case. Not so much now. According to a new report by Jason Lloyd of The Athletic. Want to give him credit for this story. And The Athletic is a very, very reliable news source, one of the more reliable when it comes to sports. He reported that, quote, the locker room in Cleveland was divided because of Mayfield's behavior. So here's what he wrote. Mayfield was widely viewed as childish and immature. His behavior annoyed teammates and divided the locker room. He was often difficult to coach. Oh, really? You don't say. So, here's the thing. And I told y'all last week when the trade was made, this past Thursday, I didn't like the trade for Carolina or for Baker. For Carolina, are we sure Baker's a huge upgrade over Sam Darnold? Is he better? I think he is. I was more of a Darnold guy in 2018, but hey, Baker, I think, has proven without a question to certainly have had more success in the NFL, although he's certainly in Cleveland had a lot more support in terms of his roster than Darnold has had anywhere. But Baker has been more successful. And I didn't like it for Baker's end because, if you're trying to boost your stock, maybe don't play this year. If you're not going to play for Cleveland, don't play. You heal that shoulder up, take a year off of football. Let's say maybe you get lucky and the Browns don't play so well in your absence. Because we don't know the status of Deshaun Watson and Jacoby Brissett, and I really like Jacoby Brissett as a low-end starter, high-end backup. But I'd take Baker. I would take a healthy Baker Mayfield over Jacoby Brissett. So I didn't like the trade for both sides. But this report is not surprising. I mean, even this article, I'm quoting it from thespun.com. It says that shortly after the trade was completed, Jason Lloyd of The Athletic dropped a bombshell report. Bombshell? We knew this. Okay, let's start with the first point. Widely viewed as childish and immature. Well, we knew that back to his days in Oklahoma. Remember that game against Kansas when Oklahoma is just beating the you-know-what out of little old Kansas, who, is not exactly known for their football program by any means. Football, that is their program, that and their phenomenal women's softball team. Baseball ain't too bad, but their softball's incredible. Point is, Oklahoma is beating up little old Kansas. They're probably up 40 points. And Baker Mayfield's on the sideline. He's been pulled from the game because, Oklahoma is crushing Kansas. And Baker looks to the bench, looks to the opposite sideline of Kansas. And again, Kansas has a kind of a small football stadium for a big athletic program. And here's Baker Mayfield, who's about to win the Heisman Trophy this season, grabbing his junk, using, language towards the bench. It's like the quarterback's doing that. This is the same guy who, after Oklahoma beat Ohio State, grabs the Oklahoma flag, runs out to midfield with the entire team, waves it around, and plants it at midfield in Columbus. It's like, I'm cool with that if that's a linebacker doing that. Absolutely. A receiver. But if it's the quarterback, for that matter, if it's the head coach, come on, you're bigger than that. I expect more out of the court. I'm going to say he can't have fun. You guys know I'm not part of the no fun police. I despise the NFL's taunting rule. I made that very clear last season. But as quarterback, you are expected to carry yourself in a professional manner that's not the same as other positions. Yeah, other team leaders, whether it be your middle linebacker, whether it be, a defensive end, on the defensive side of the football, whether it's, a passionate wide receiver, a kind of quiet, but, good leadership in terms of what he does in the field, like a running back or something. Quarterback, we expect different from you emotionally than any other position. Frankly, any other position in sports. I mean, we don't expect the first baseman to be the model of, incredible maturity. We do slightly with the pitchers, but not even close to quarterbacks. So childish and immature. I mean, yeah, you knew that when you were drafting him. What do you think? He was going to change for Cleveland? He might change for New England. I mean, they've had some big personalities within their franchise, and there hasn't been a ton of drama. Baker Mayfield's going to change for the poorly run Browns? No, that's not going to happen. Second part of the report. His behavior annoyed teammates and divided the locker room. Well, yeah, his behavior would annoy me quite a bit if I was one of his teammates. All the nonsense at the media getting testy with them, and he took a shot at Duke Johnson, who wanted to trade out of Cleveland. Remember that 2019? I think it was OTAs, because I remember it was during the NBA Finals at that time. Duke Johnson is a third-string running back. He knows he's not going to get a whole lot of playing time because he's behind Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. So he's like, hey, I want an opportunity elsewhere. I want an opportunity to play well and make myself a little money. Okay, I get that. I get that from him. And Baker Mayfield goes to the media and takes shots at his teammate. Oh, okay. Takes shots at Hugh Jackson in 2018. I'm not here to say Hugh Jackson is a great head coach, because he's not, certainly in the NFL. But rise above that. Okay. Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck, and I was reading about a new podcast series about Andrew Luck that's coming out that's really interesting. Andrew Luck took a pounding for the first 4 years of his career. He once played a game in 2015 against the Denver Broncos, who, in my view, is one of the greatest defenses of all time that doesn't get enough credit. Okay, that Broncos defense was, remember what they did to Cam Newton in the Super Bowl? Yeah. Andrew Luck beat them, played well against them, with a lacerated kidney. Okay? So, he didn't take shots at Chuck Pagano, his head coach, or his abysmal offensive line, or the terrible general manager. Forgot his name at the time. No. Matter of fact, Andrew Luck was almost, in some instances, too positive, it seemed like. Sometimes inauthentically. Baker, opposite. Takes shots at coaches, takes shots at teammates, gets into constant spats with the media. Divided the locker room. Yeah, you know what I think divided the locker room? The reports came out of Cleveland that divided the locker room. Odell Beckham Jr. was in Cleveland and was in Los Angeles with the Rams. Beloved. Loved the guy. Right? If you know anything about Odell Beckham, you know that he's kind of in his personal life. He's a very laid back, chill guy. He's a family man. He and his I don't know if it's his wife or his partner just had a baby. Like, very laid back, kind of chill dude. Right? And on the field, he's like, I want the football. Hey, I mean, he's not even the level of like a Dez Bryant or something. And I never had a problem with Dez winning the football, but Odell wasn't even that. And Baker and him constantly back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then Odell's dad, Odell Beckham Sr., put out the video that we all talked about. I talked about in this show. Y'all talked about it. All the other TV shows and radio shows and podcasts were talking about it. Odell Beckham Sr. putting out the video, the compilation of when his son was wide open and Baker didn't throw it to him. Didn't even look his direction. And when Odell was released, subsequently signed by the Los Angeles Rams, that was it. That was it. The locker room turned on Baker. Because, like, hold on a minute. Look, I get quarterback's more important than receiver. We get that. But you chose him over him? And then the last part, he was often difficult to coach. Well, yeah, he had 4 head coaches. Of course he was difficult to coach. You kidding me? Hugh Jackson, get it, not a great head coach. Then he had Greg Williams. Then he had Freddie Kitchens. You say, well, Freddie Kitchens wasn't qualified. Hey, you should have told Baker that. It was Baker. Go back and look at the reports. It was Baker Mayfield who pushed the Browns to hire Hugh Jackson. To hire Freddie Kitchens. And then they hire Kevin Stefanski, who I think we all would agree has been pretty good. Wasn't huge on the hire, but he has very much proven himself and has established a solid culture running the football in Cleveland. I mean, Kirk Cousins hasn't looked quite the same since his old offensive coordinator left to be the coach of the Cleveland Browns. Baker still couldn't make it work. 4 head coaches in 4 years. So this report is not surprising at all. I don't know. Like, this is, the sky's blue and there's clouds in it. Okay. I don't know what I'm supposed to take from this. Yeah, of course, Baker was difficult to coach and didn't get along with teammates and was viewed as immature. There's a reason that the Browns basically said we want an adult at quarterback, which I'm not sure Deshaun Watson is the model of that, but that's another conversation for another day. Maybe Jacoby Brissett is. Jacoby Brissett's very mature, right? But he's not as good as Baker Mayfield. Plenty of options out there that the Browns could have went with, and they decided to go with the guy with the most baggage in the NFL. But what they did move on from, without a question, was a, whatever Baker's, 26, 27-year-old who acts like a 17-year-old. An immature 17-year-old. I know plenty of 17-year-olds that are just as mature as Baker. Or, I'm sorry, more mature than Baker. So this report does not surprise me in the slightest. Grady, I knew this was going to come up at some point. Grady Edwards, a lot of drama with Zach Wilson and his mom's friend, apparently. I wonder how John feels about that. John will come in the comments at some point, I'm sure, hopefully during the show. But I'm not even going to spend a segment on that. If y'all don't know the whole Zach Wilson and his mom situation, just Google it. I don't want to talk about it on this show. Grady Edwards, Odell's dad is a savage. He very much is. Odell's dad, kind of saved his son, because he got released by Cleveland. The relationship between, Odell and Baker soured. He goes to Los Angeles, and what do you know? He was a huge part in the Rams winning a Super Bowl, 5 months ago. Grady also says, I guess he has a parent-teacher work conference with the Browns management that got Odell out of there. I guess. Of course, I do think Odell, in all seriousness, I think he did meet with the Browns before they released him. They didn't just release him cold turkey. And I think he was released during one of the practices because Kevin Stefanski, I remember this was late October or early November last year, told Odell to stay home, during practice. He's like, we're going to either trade you or release you. No point in you coming to practice. And especially too, because when you have a situation where it's Baker Mayfield, who's kind of, even Baker fans would have to admit, he's a controversial character, certainly for a quarterback. He is a polarizing guy. You either love Baker or you don't love him. Odell Beckham, the vast majority of football fans, certainly the vast majority of football players, they really like Odell. He's a good dude, right? He's been through some major injuries, loves the game of football, works his tail off. He's a good dude, does some great things off the field. So it was kind of y'all signing with this guy, and he's not even on a long-term contract. You're signing with him over, hold on a minute, there's something going on here. So no, I didn't need this report to be like, oh my goodness, I'm so surprised about this. But hey, that's Odell Beckham. I'm sorry, that's Baker Mayfield for you. And I'm not sure if he didn't change for the Cleveland Browns, he darn sure ain't, changing for the Carolina Panthers. That I know for a fact. But listen, man, there is, as Grady, mentioned in the comments, there's certainly a lot going on in the NFL right now, not just with Mr. Zach Wilson. Let's see. We got a comment here. Unfortunately, I cannot pronounce the name of the person commenting, but I appreciate him or her being in the comments. Are there hooligan fanatic fans in American football and basketball like in Europe? In Europe, smoke flares are thrown, chairs are burned sometimes, beaten sometimes. Well, I've seen the videos of some of the basketball games in Europe, like where some of the games that Luka Doncic has played overseas, and it's wild. There's no question about it. We do have, if you want to call it hooligan fans, yeah, we do have some some wild fan bases without question. The Buffalo Bills, at tailgates, outside of football games, they'll set tables on fire and fans will jump on top of them. Tailgating events in Buffalo are just, the stuff of legend. I can speak for, I hate to have to talk about this today, but I can speak for tennis as a Tennessee Vols football fan, trying as much as possible not to, anyways, I guess be like the majority of Tennessee fans who go to night games at Neyland Stadium, if you know what I mean. There was a game where my Vols played the Ole Miss Rebels last year, and late in the game, there was a call by the official. It was kind of a go-either-way call, but of course, as any fan base would feel, Tennessee fans felt like the refs made the wrong call, and they went overboard and started throwing stuff on the field. We're talking glass bottles of alcohol. We're talking, food, full boxes of pizza. Lane Kiffin, who's the head coach of Ole Miss, he even caught a yellow golf ball that a fan threw from the stands. So not to the extent of Europe. Nothing's burned. Nothing, knock on wood. Hopefully nothing's ever burned. We do not have any burning chairs, any of that nature like they do in Europe, because I do see some of the videos from there, and it's crazy. I don't know how the players focus on the game. It's, respect to them. But we do have some rowdy fan bases. Let's put it that way. There's no question about it. We no question have rowdy fan bases in sports, particularly football, more than any of them. I guess probably because it's the most popular sport in America, and look, it's other grown men hitting each other and trying to move another human being against their will. And that's football in a nutshell. But yeah, we definitely have our crazy fans in America. There's no question. Moving on to basketball, moving on to the National Basketball Association. I gotta talk about this because I saw this. I'm like, man, oh man. So Ja Morant, just ridiculously talented basketball player, folks. If you've never seen Ja Morant play, I feel sorry for you. Like he's just electric. But he was on I think it was a podcast with Taylor Rooks, who does a really good job. I believe she works for Bleacher Report. And they were talking about, what era he'd want to play in or what player he'd want to play against. And they got to talking about Michael Jordan. And Ja Morant saw about, hey, I'd like to play in the same era as Michael Jordan. I wish I could go back and play against him. The actual quote was, I wish I could have played in his generation, though. And then he went on. And this is often how podcast interviews go. You get a little too comfortable behind the mic, and then you just keep going and going, and then you say something you probably shouldn't. Ja Morant said, quote, just how he go about the game, the mindset he had. Again, talking about Michael Jordan. Just how he go about the game, the mindset he had. I would like to play against him. I'd have cooked him too. Because after he said I would have liked to have played against him. And Taylor Rooks asked the question, like, well, would you have beaten Michael Jordan 1-on-1? And Ja's like, yeah, which I don't have a problem with him saying he beat Michael Jordan. But then he goes a step further. I would have cooked him too. Kids, and I can say this because I am a kid. Kids just say the darndest things. Ja Morant, buddy, you are a heck of a basketball player. You have had an unbelievable start to your career in just the first 3 seasons. But in the last week, you have referred to yourself while giving a big tip to a waitress, so I'll give you props there. But in the last week, you have dubbed yourself Black Jesus, which the only player I've ever heard called that was, in fact, Michael Jordan by Reggie Miller. And now I'd have cooked Michael Jordan, the real quote-unquote Black Jesus. Okay, so I've had a saying on the show. I wouldn't say it's a saying, just a mantra, just a belief system. Ever since you don't necessarily want to look it back. It's my podcast game was a little rougher than it was now in terms of, wasn't as confident behind the mic. But the very second episode of this show, I remember Jarvis Landry, who I have great respect for, formerly of the Cleveland Browns, now with the New Orleans Saints. And he said something to the effect of, we are going to go into Foxborough and beat the New England Patriots. Now, mind you, Tom Brady is still there. And at that point, the Patriots had yet to lose a game at home, and the Browns had gotten off to a rough start in 2019. And I said in the show, I said, I don't have a problem with it. If you back it up, I got no issue with it. A year later, Dabo Swinney, before a college football playoff game against Ohio State, said himself, wasn't asked, he voluntarily said, I did not vote in the coaches poll. I did not vote for Ohio State to be in the top 10. I'm like, why would you say that? And I said, but then again, if Clemson beats Ohio State, hey, I can't say anything to I can't say anything to Dabo. Ohio State crushed Clemson. Okay, so, I mean, last year, the flip side, Mike McCarthy, head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, guaranteed that the Cowboys were going to go into Washington and beat them. He was right. Got no issue with it. That's the thing. If you can back it up. Now, we know Ja Morant will never be able to back up. Could he beat a prime Michael Jordan? We'll never know. If we did bring back Michael Jordan from the 90s to play somebody, it would be LeBron James, because we've been debating that for years and years and years. We would not have him play Ja Morant. But what I'm saying in the if you say something, I'm good with it as long as you back it up department, Ja is referring to himself as if he is already an all-time great. If Ja Morant retired tomorrow, what do we think of him as? A stupidly athletic point guard who's great off the dribble, not very good defensively, middle of the pack shooter, but man, can he score the basketball in the paint, especially for his size and his slender frame. And then you have Ja Morant also adding to it. He's taking shots at my Golden State Warriors for how they celebrated winning the NBA Finals. He said, quote, "It just felt like if I had won a championship, I wouldn't think about no other team or what somebody said months ago. But as you see, they won the championship. Everything was Grizzlies. Playing whoop that trick in their parade, showing it in the club, talking about Jaren Jackson Jr., this and that. Mr. Morant, I hate to inform you, when you win a championship, and maybe if you're lucky enough to be on a great team and lead a team to a championship, which I think you're fully capable of doing at some point in your career, you can say whatever you want." Because now he's referring to Jaren Jackson Jr. Jaren Jackson Jr., excellent, power forward defensive player on the Memphis Grizzlies. He tweeted after the Grizzlies played the Warriors in March, a Warriors team that did not have Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, or James Wiseman. Grizzlies smoked Golden State. And Jaren Jackson Jr. tweeted, "Strength in numbers," which is the Warriors' famous catchphrase. Strength in numbers. Jaren Jackson Jr. tweeted that. After the Warriors won the finals in Game 6 against the Boston Celtics, Klay Thompson said after the game, man, there was this guy in the Memphis Grizzlies tweeted strength in numbers, talking about Jaren Jackson Jr. He said, freaking bum. And speaking of Michael Jordan, since he's in this discussion, when you get to that stage, you have doubters, okay? I always say you can't be great unless you have doubters. But in some instances, you have to create your own doubters. Remember Michael Jordan? I forgot the guy he was playing. It was some guy at the time, the Washington Bullets, now the Washington Wizards. And this guy played really well against the Chicago Bulls, and the Bulls happened to be playing Washington the very next night. And a report came out of Chicago that said player on Washington told Michael Jordan, quote, "Nice game, Mike." And Michael Jordan proceeded to score 37 points in the first half, and he had 40-something for the game. As it turned out, that guy never said, "Nice game, Mike." Michael Jordan just made it up. Michael Jordan had a coach who played overseas with a guy who played with Michael Jordan. He never said who the player was, but he said he played with Michael Jordan. And he said that the guy who played with Jordan told my coach who played overseas that Michael would go to the nightclub the night before playoff games and, gamble. We know Jordan did have a gambling problem, and be talking all kinds of mess about whoever the best player on whoever the Bulls' next opponent was, so that the challenge would be greater. That's what the greats of the greats do. Sometimes they make up stuff. And so for Golden State, now they didn't make this up. Jaren Jackson tweeted, strength in numbers. Klay Thompson's like, okay, all right. Because what you got to realize, and I've learned this in a small scale in doing this podcast, you can't just say anything and then people forget about it. People bring it back up. That's fine. That's what makes this fun, right? When we're like right on the money or something or dead wrong. But Klay Thompson can say whatever what he wants after winning a championship. Steph Curry can definitely say whatever he wants. Draymond, you got a problem with the podcast? Hate to hear that. You're going to have to hear about the Warriors winning a championship until next season starts in October. And so Ja Morant has a problem with the Warriors celebrate, but then calls himself Black Jesus and says I'd have cooked Michael Jordan. You can't have it both ways, okay? You can say you're great, and then, but then, sort of speaking of hypotheticals, I wouldn't be talking about a team that we just played a month ago. First of all, I don't believe that. Second of all, if you paint the target on your back and another team uses that as fuel, beats you, goes on to win the championship, sorry, go get them next year. And look, Memphis is going to be a very competitive team next year, I think. But Ja's talking crazy right now. Talking crazy. Let us see here. We have some comments. Person earlier who was who was asking me a question about any crazy fans here in the States. He said, or they said, I don't know if it's a he or she. They said the most popular sports football in the world. Will the MLS league also become more popular in the United States in the warranty years than the past? Well, MLS soccer has been something that has grown over the last few years. I know a lot of billionaires, even millionaires have invested. Russell Wilson, who I'm going to talk about later in the show, Russell Wilson, his wife Sierra, back when Russell played in Seattle, bought a stake into the Seattle Sounders MLS soccer club. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely grown. Soccer is blood more in the United States for the overseas play, kind of like how overseas there's the number one league they watch in terms of basketball is the NBA because it's the best league in the world. Likewise, in America, the soccer leagues we watch, or at least the soccer teams we watch Manchester United. We watch Real Madrid. We watch those teams. We don't watch the teams here unless it's, say, like the U.S. women's soccer team or something. But yes, the MLS is growing in popularity, and I expect to continue to grow. Soccer is increasingly, as we go on, soccer is increasingly popular sport. Back to Ja Morant. Grady Edwards says, Ja is very cocky. He dubbed himself as the point god before the draft a few years back. However, you got to have that confidence to become it. Love it. We know he wants to be like Mike. I don't know if I'd say it, though. That's something I want to talk about too, Grady, and I'm glad you said that. He says, I don't know if I'd have said it, though. Someone once said gangsters move in silence. I think it was Meek Mill who said that. Yeah. Think about, let's use LeBron James for an example. And I think Steph Curry, you can apply this to him too because of the doubters he faced. Steph had to deal with the whole no finals MVPs stigma, right? He can't have a finals MVP or he can't be in the top 10 if he doesn't have a finals MVP. Well, he's got one now. What are you going to say? That's why the Warriors were saying, what are you going to say now? That's why LeBron James had went 4 years without winning a championship in between 2016 and 2020. And after, and everybody talked about LeBron. He's not the best player anymore. Kawhi's better. KD's better. His days of winning championships are over. Only reason he went to the Lakers was to make movies. He didn't want to be Michael Jordan. He wanted to be Michael B. Jordan. He's never going to win a title in LA. Or now the Clippers are better. And the bubble's going to destroy the Lakers. He's not the MVP. Giannis is. All of that. LeBron did not say a word about it for 4 years. Lakers won the title in 2020. LeBron says, I want my respect. We want to respect, and I want my respect. You hang on to that. You just don't verbalize it. That's the thing. That's what Ja Morant is going to have to realize or possibly learn the hard way. Who knows? Because we know when Golden State and Memphis play next season for the first time, there's, Draymond and Ja Morant both suggested, hey, how about the Warriors and Grizzlies play on Christmas? I'd love it. The game would be at Chase Center, which Draymond had to remind Ja Morant because the defending champions always play at home on Christmas. Or most of it. Yeah, they always play at home on Christmas if they play on Christmas at all. And Ja were like, hey, meet us at the crib in Memphis. And Draymond's like, bro, no, the game would be in Golden State. they don't make the champions go on the road for the Christmas Day games. But hey, we may get it. But the first time these two teams play, heck, any of the games these two teams play, it is going to be a playoff atmosphere. I'm not going to dub this a rivalry yet, because I think the only true rivalry Golden State ever had was with Cleveland. They didn't have a rivalry with Houston. They won 4 straight series against Houston. They were kind of a threat in 2018, but outside of that, they weren't beating them in 15. They darn sure wasn't beating them in 16. 18, they posed a threat. They were up 3-2 in the Warriors in 2019. Steph did Steph things. Let's see. Grady says, speaking of the Bulls, I got free time during work today and saw the raising of the 97-98 championship banner. One of the saddest moments in sports I've ever seen. Arena was half full, and none of the former players came back for it. I've always thought, it's funny. I've never watched that on YouTube. I have always wondered about the 98 Bulls and how they did the ring ceremony, because that being the last dance season, Jordan had retired. Pippen had left for either Portland or Houston. I think it was Houston. Pippen had left for Houston. Phil Jackson had, for the moment, retired before he years later went on to coach the Lakers. Dennis Rodman left. I forgot where he ended up playing. Was it maybe he went to the Lakers? But all these different guys leaving, and so there was really nobody left. And so I can imagine it was kind of a weird moment considering the circumstances of the last dance and the fact that team wasn't coming back. And I'd say that given how that ended with the whole Jerry Krause, Michael Jordan beef, and especially the Jerry Krause and Scottie Pippen beef, and Phil Jackson, Jerry Krause beef, which, Jerry Krause had a beef with everybody. He's a great general manager, but man, he could not get along with anybody. But I can only imagine it was quite an awkward moment. But let's move on. Sticking in the NBA, let's move on to Portland. Let's go to the Pacific Northwest. I'm going to talk about one current Pacific Northwest athlete and then a former one who got traded to the Denver Broncos. Of course, I'm talking about Russell Wilson. But let's talk about Damian Lillard for a second. He signed a massive 2-year, $160 million. I'm sorry, not 160, $120 million extension to stay with the Portland Trailblazers. I think until 2027. So he's a Blazer, for lack of a better term, he's a Blazer for life. And Damian Lillard, ever since he's been in Portland, especially these last few years when there have been calls from people like myself for him to leave Portland, he's like, hey, I like it here. I like being in this Portland Trailblazers uniform. I want to win it. Winning a championship elsewhere won't mean as much as winning a title here in Portland. And first of all, I believe him. I think any athlete, the team that you get drafted by, the first thing you think of is, I want to win a championship with this team. That's why even LeBron coming back to Cleveland, that one title in Cleveland meant 10 times more than the 2 he won in Miami. Because A, it was the team he was drafted by, and B, it was his hometown team. Right? So, Steph Curry, you saw how emotional he was with, winning his 4th championship. It was because many called for him to leave Golden State, but he stayed and he won a title. Giannis was incredibly emotional. Why? That was the team that drafted him. That was the city that took an 18-year-old kid, from humble beginnings in Greece, and he won a championship for him. There's the emotional component of it. And so from that perspective, I totally get where Damian Lillard's coming from. Winning a title in Portland would mean a whole lot more than winning a title in Boston. It just would. See, I'm not going to come on here and say that Damian Lillard made a mistake, because I think to say a mistake would be Kevin Durant leaving the Warriors for Kyrie Irving in Brooklyn. That's a mistake. That's something that there's not much good that's going to come out of it. That's a mistake. There's good that comes out of this. Dame gets paid in Portland. Props to him. I've been a huge Damian Lillard fan for the last 3.5 years or so. And then I think also as well, look, I don't think it's that Dame doesn't want to win a championship. I think, and we've read reports that he's been pressuring the front office in Portland like, hey, I gave y'all loyalty. I'm staying. I'm here the long term. Please put the pieces around me so we can go win. We traded CJ McCollum. That backcourt history had sort of run its course. Dame and CJ, real tight, really good duo. Kind of really came together around 2016 when CJ won the Most Improved Player. But it had run its course. It had gone as far as it could go. Yeah, they went to the conference finals in 2019. That's as close as they got to winning a title. And when they got to the conference finals, they got swept by my Warriors. And so the additions of Jeremy Grant this offseason, I liked that one. I think it was a really stupid trade by Detroit. The Sharp kid that they drafted out of Kentucky. Now, I'm reading that he's got some injuries, but I think he is super talented. Myself, Mike Guido, and Barry Grant Jr. did the NBA draft live stream. I was like, man, this kid is going to be special if he gets the opportunity, to shine in Portland. I think he will. It's a well-run franchise. Chauncey Billups, I think, has done a solid job in Portland. That team has improved drastically on the defensive end of the floor. The bottom line is, can they get scores? Can they get guys to who fit around Damian Lillard? And if they do, maybe they can compete. The problem is, it is Portland. Milwaukee, the last piece to the puzzle of them winning a championship in 2021, Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday didn't choose to go to Milwaukee. He was acquired in a trade. What you have to do in order to build a championship culture, if you are a small market, is trade for a star player or even a good role player, bring him in, let him see that, hey, it ain't half bad here. And then he very well may sign long term. That's for the record. That's what Oklahoma City did with Paul George, albeit briefly. But Paul George had a year left in his contract. He got traded to Oklahoma City. Everybody and their mama knew Paul George wanted to play in Los Angeles, whether it was for the Lakers, the Clippers. Why? Because Paul George is from LA, but he plays in Oklahoma City, likes it. And so free agency comes around in 2018, and we're like, oh, Paul George is gone. He signs a 4-year deal with OKC. Now, after a year, he gets traded to the Clippers to go team up with Kawhi. But I think that was more than anything because he knew he had a better chance of winning a championship in LA. And Kawhi sort of worked behind the scenes to make that all happen. But that's what Portland is going to have to do. And by the way, I have confidence in the Blazers. People forget about Portland, and I've always respected the way they do business. Portland's been a really good drafting team over the course of their history. The problem is they have had some terrible luck. Everybody talks about Greg Oden in 2007 as one of the biggest draft busts in NBA history, in part because injuries literally ended his career before he even got a chance to start, and because the second overall pick was none other than Kevin Durant. And so it was like, wow, you could have taken Kevin Durant and, you could have went a lot further than you did with Greg Oden. I think Greg Oden would have been a star center in this league. He just had injuries. They had a star guard in Brandon Roy. Man, Brandon Roy could score the basketball. He was a cheat code on NBA 2K. Injuries got him. So they've just had some really, really just bad luck with injuries as to some of their star players who they've drafted. So I have confidence Portland can draft some guys who fit with Damian Lillard. I think Shaedon Sharpe is one of those kids. If he can stay healthy, he's already got some injuries off the bat. So can he stay healthy? And in terms of guys they bring in trades like a Jeremy Grant, what you're going to have to do is convince them on the inside that, hey, this is somewhere you want to stay long term. Because you're not going to convince them from the outside. Because if they have the choice between Portland and Miami, where do you think they're going to go? Unless Portland just gives them so much more money. So that's what's going to have to come to. By the way, Portland made a good move. Broke my heart. They signed Gary Payton II. Really wish the Warriors would have retained him. Reports are it rubbed people the wrong way within the Warriors, team that they didn't keep Gary Payton II. But that's a good addition for Portland. Fits exactly what Chauncey Billups wants to do, especially in the defensive end of the floor. So I don't think this is a bad move by Damian. I think Bradley Beal staying in Washington is a bad move. That's a bad move. That's just staying loyal for the sake of staying loyal. It is. And what it somewhat shows, and look, I'm never one, if you want to go get a big contract, good on you. But Bradley Beal's, he's made his money. I would think at this stage of his career, especially in his prime, he's like, hey, I want to play for a winner. By the way, Bradley Beal's one of the 10 best scorers in basketball. He can get buckets, man. That felt like a bad move. Washington's not a well-run franchise. They're just not. This is the same franchise that and I hate speaking bad about a player that just won a championship with my Warriors. This is the same franchise that gave Otto Porter Jr. like what, $88 million or something crazy. Okay, that's not an $88 million player type of guy, but that's what they do. They haven't drafted horribly well. So that Rui Hachimura kid is nice, but he's not a star. So that's a bad move, in my opinion, by Bradley Beal, because what is he going to get out of it? As for Damian Lillard, Portland's a well-run franchise. They had the longest streak of the longest streak up until this past season of making the playoffs. So they're good enough to get to the playoffs. The question is, can they go further than that? And they're going to have to in order for Damian Lillard to be happy. He wants to stay in Portland. Can they put the pieces around him? That's the only question. Got a few comments here. Grady says, I can understand why Portland would hold on to Dame. He could be the best player on a title team, in my opinion. But man, why are the Wizards hanging on to Bradley Beal? Good point. I'd trade that guy quick, fast, and in a hurry. They should Blake Griffin him for a ton of assets like the Clippers did. They should have traded Bradley Beal for Ben Simmons when he was available in Philly. That works for both sides, because then Ben Simmons can go to a market where there's not even close to the amount of pressure that Philly is, because we know the head case that Ben is. And then as for Bradley Beal, hey, Bradley Beal, Joel Embiid, that's a good duo. I mean, that's a team that I'm not sure maybe championship quite yet, but if you put the pieces around him, who knows? But yeah, I agree with you on the Bradley Beal thing. That one was just, that was weird. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I respect the fact that, because I think the Warriors and the Bucks, the last two NBA champions, well, listen, it's a copycat league. It's a copy, every sport's copycat. Years ago, the Los Angeles Rams with Sean McVay, this is a second-year head coach. He's a kid. He could barely drink. But Sean McVay, in the 2018 preseason, did not play one single starter. Like, what are you doing? You got to get him reps. Sean McVay's like, I can get him reps in practice. I don't want these guys getting hurt. What did the Rams do? They went to the Super Bowl that year. And so now what does everybody do? Outside of kind of the older school head coaches like the Mike Tomlins or the Andy Reids, Bill Belichick, nobody plays their starters in the preseason. Nobody. Sports is business in general. It's very copycat. Same with the NBA. I think the Bucks and the Warriors, the Bucks being a small market team, the Warriors definitely not a small market at all in San Francisco. But the last two finals MVPs, both superstar players, in my view, the two best players in basketball currently, with the team they're drafted, and players know, they see what it meant to Giannis to win in Milwaukee. They see what it meant to Steph. I get it was title number 4, but you saw the emotions from Steph. You saw how the Warriors celebrated. That was in part because of people never thought that they could do it again. People doubted Steph. But that was also in part like, this is home. This is home. Giannis is fully a part of the city of Milwaukee. Steph is fully a part of the Bay Area. I think players around the league see that, and they see Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, who bounce around teams, and how that falls apart. And they see LeBron James in the LA, like, in some cases the grass may be greener, but maybe not always. I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting. I think that plays factor for sure. And even if Boston had won the championship, they even if the Boston Celtics had won the NBA Finals, it would have been the star player or the two star players, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, from the team that drafted him, that won a championship. So I think it's interesting. I think it's something to consider. All right. So we talked about the guy who's still a superstar athlete in the Pacific Northwest in Portland, Oregon. Now let's talk about a guy who just got traded. He kind of forced his way out, but got traded out of the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, Washington, to Denver, Colorado to play with the Denver Broncos. That is Russell Wilson. Speaking of the Denver Broncos, by the way, Condoleezza Rice, a former Secretary of State, just bought stake into the Broncos, which is pretty cool. So shout out to Condi for that. She's a big sports fan. She's a Browns fan. As a matter of fact, I think the Browns actually pursued her to be the head coach, I think in 2016 2016. No, 20. I think it was 2019. And they were looking for a head coach. I'm like, Condi's a very intelligent woman, but head coach, but that's Cleveland. But she's part of the college football playoff committee, so that's cool. And Denver's got the new owner from the family that owns Walmart that just bought the team. I think it was like the richest or the most money a team has ever been purchased for in NFL history, the Broncos. And now with Russell Wilson, now with all of the primetime games that Denver's going to get, I'm telling you, especially with the new TV deal, not to get, too far off topic before we get to Russell Wilson, but this new TV deal that's going to come in I think a couple, 2-3 more years, the net worths of these owners, the value of these sports franchises are going to absolutely skyrocket. Jerry Jones in 2-3 years is probably going to be worth about $10 billion. And he's worth about, I think, $7-8 billion now. Like this, you watch this new TV deal, the salary cap is going to explode. That's why shout out to Dak Prescott for signing the contract when he did and timing it when he did, because everybody's like, oh, how can you possibly pay Dak $40 million now? That number may be looking like 50-something million down the road when the new TV deal comes in, because he's, again, man, the NFL is the money is just skyrocketing, and good for them that they were able to to survive the pandemic, because what they see was coming down the road. Whew. But I was kind of reading about the Broncos. I was like, okay, let's talk about kind of what the expectation should be for Denver. What should we expect from the Denver Broncos in terms of possibly being a Super Bowl contending team? Because we know Denver did not make that trade for Russell Wilson to make the playoffs and maybe win a game. No. Russell Wilson is a Super Bowl champion. Ironically, he did it against the Broncos. Came within a single yard, famously, of winning 2 straight Super Bowls and doing against Peyton Manning and Tom Brady in back-to-back years. That's pretty good. He's a perennial MVP candidate. When healthy, he's an automatic 35-plus touchdowns a year. He is the model citizen in terms of leadership at the quarterback position. He can get outside the pocket. He's accurate. He's got a big arm. With just a terrible offensive line at the end of his tenure in Seattle, he'd still year in and year out and year out get them to the postseason. And so now you put him on a Denver Broncos squad. Denver's thinking, Russell's the last piece. That's what we need. Keep in mind, folks, the Denver Broncos defense was 3rd in the NFL in scoring defense, meaning only 2 teams in the whole NFL gave up less points than last year's Broncos defense. That is playing in the AFC West with Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Derek Carr. That's what the Denver Broncos did. And so you don't have to worry about the defense, because the only defensive player they gave up in the Russell Wilson trade was like was it Shelby Harrison was the guy's name? Shelby something. He was a defensive tackle. Nice player, but not exactly Russell Wilson. You add Russell to a Broncos team that has a stacked receiving core. Jerry Jeudy, who, he's got a legal problem right now. We'll see where that, how that turns out. But you probably have Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton. You got that kid, I forgot his name now. Tim Patrick, really good deep threat. Good running game with Denver. Really good offensive line. Garrett Bowles is a top 10, 15 offensive lineman in the NFL. And so you have all those pieces. And I think something that makes it really interesting that people aren't talking about, Denver has a 4th place schedule. Because, they most of the time, the last, 6-7 years since Peyton Manning retired, they have had a 4th place schedule. And so you look at Denver and guys. You look at, the schedule, and they are a guaranteed 2-0 off the start. Because, of course, we know the first game, Monday Night Football, Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, their first game in the Monday Night Football booth. Russell Wilson returns to Seattle in week number 1. Denver is a 5-point road favorite. That is in part because Denver is really good and Seattle is really bad. Denver's going to win that game. I anticipate Russell gets off to a little bit of a rough start. Maybe the emotions kind of get to him. We saw that with Tom Brady when he returned to New England. Tom didn't have a very good game. Denver, I don't expect Russell to tear up the Seahawks, if you will. Like throw for like 5 touchdowns or something. But Denver will beat Seattle. Like they're a bottom 5 team, the Seahawks are. They come home, Russell's home opener, and play Houston. They'll definitely beat Houston. They're an 11. This is the NFL we're talking about now. This is like a college line. They're an 11-point favorite at home against the Houston Texans in week number 2. Okay, then they got their first real test at home against the San Francisco 49ers. We've got to realize Denver always plays well in September, even with the limited play they've had at the quarterback position. They have always played well in the month of September. And Trey Lance will likely be the starting quarterback for the Niners. Y'all know I bought back, I shouldn't say I bought back. I never sold my stock on Trey Lance. I'm going to hang on to the kid unless he, doesn't pan out. But that's loud Denver in that altitude. That's going to be a tough game for the Niners to win. I think Denver wins that game. Then they go on the road to take on the Vegas Raiders. So now we got divisional matchups. I could see this being a loss for the Broncos because, Vegas, the new weapons that they've added, the pass rush, adding Chandler Jones. Vegas is going to be, I'm not ready to go Super Bowl contender quite yet, but they could be a problem. You do not want to play them if you're a division winner and they get in the postseason as a wild card team. You do not want to play them if they're even remotely healthy. So I think Denver loses that one. Come home, play the Colts on a short week on Thursday Night Football. I'm going to also give that a loss. Frank Reich is a more experienced head coach. Short week. I get it's a road game in Denver. I'll give the Colts a win. So that's 2 straight losses for the Broncos. They go on the road. I think they beat the Chargers on Monday Night Football to go to 4-2. They play the Jets at home. Sorry, Mr. Rivera. Sorry, Mr. Parsard Jr. The Jets are going to get smoked by the Denver Broncos in this game. Denver wins easily. They're a 9-point favorite. I'm sorry, an 8-point favorite in this game. I think they'll cover and win to go to 5-2. Then they play at London against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who even last year with Urban Meyer won in London. That said, I think Denver wins the game. 6-2. Go on the road to play the Tennessee Titans. I'm not big at all on Tennessee this year. The quarterback controversy, losing A.J. Brown, the way they lost the playoffs last year, I'm not sure that team really trusts Ryan Tannehill. And while I like Malik Willis, he is still a rookie. So I'll give the Broncos a win there. So that's 7-2, right? That's 7. Yeah. Yeah, 7-2. They come home to play the Raiders. I think they beat the Raiders. They go on the road to Carolina. They win that game as well. So that's 9-2. Go on the road to play Baltimore. I'll give the Ravens a win there. I really like Baltimore this year. I talked about that last week. So they will drop to 9-3. Come on to play the Chiefs. Give them the Chiefs a dub there, 9-4. They play the Cardinals at home. They'll win that one, 10-4. And then I think they go. I think they go 1-2 in their last 3 games, and finish with a record of 11-6. Now, will that be enough to win the division? In the AFC West, maybe, because you do have these 4 teams who, I mean, let's be honest. Would we be genuinely shocked? I think we all be honest. If you'd have told us before last season the Cincinnati Bengals would be in the Super Bowl, we'd have been like, yeah, right. Come on, you're out of your mind. Well, they not only went to the Super Bowl, but if they had an offensive line, they probably would have won the Super Bowl against the Los Angeles Rams. In this case, in this division, I don't think we've ever seen anything like this in NFL history. Have we ever seen 4 teams in a single division where we're like, we could see a scenario in which any one of these 4 teams makes the Super Bowl. We could see, even if you're not big on some of these teams, if you're not big on the Chiefs because they lost Tyreek, or the Broncos because Russell's new there, or the Chargers because they always choke, or the Raiders because they usually do the same, you could see a scenario in which any 4 of these teams make the Super Bowl. So 11-6, depending on how tiebreakers go, very well could win the division. Now let's just get the record straight. The number 1 seed in the AFC is not going to come out of the West. It's going to be either Indianapolis, Baltimore, or the Buffalo Bills, because that's who I think the 3 division winners for the other divisions will be. But for Denver, the fact that Russell Wilson has won all these playoff games, even since those 2 straight Super Bowls, with a limited offensive line, a solid but not great receiving core, a terrible defense ever since the Legion of Boom broke up. Pete Carroll, who anyone who watches film that I've watched on TV or read articles say that Pete Carroll runs a very 1990s looking offense that looks nothing like it does today. And Russell goes from that to Nathaniel Hackett, who in Green Bay ran a very modern offense, and you see the dividends that paid off for Aaron Rodgers, 2 straight MVPs. So I really don't like Denver this year. I really like Denver this year. I think I'm not going to make them the favorites to win the AFC, but I'll take them to win the division. I think 11-6 wins that division with all the chaos with the Chargers and the Raiders and the Chiefs and Broncos. I think Denver wins the division. Grady in the comments, do you think it's most likely KD gets traded to a team like Sacramento or Detroit? Speaking, if it were the Kings, he'd get almost a front row seat to the Warriors dynasty. Well, obviously the Warriors have owned the Kings because they play them 4 times a year because everybody owns the Sacramento Kings. But that would be something, man. If they actually made that trade, if they actually decided to pull that off, boy, can you imagine? KD asked out of Brooklyn, gets traded to Sacramento, who has the longest playoff drought in basketball history at 16 years. For Detroit, I've liked their last couple of drafts, but Detroit's a mess. They're not competing anytime soon. That would be interesting. Grady says or asks, any chance for Trevor Lawrence to win Comeback Player of the Year next season? I actually think they're a dark horse to get into the playoffs. I don't completely disagree with you, Grady, because, and yes, I do think Trevor Lawrence could be a candidate to win Comeback Player of the Year because he's not coming off an injury, but having Urban Meyer as a head coach with all the drama that Jacksonville dealt with, that might as well be like an injury. It is like the same as if Trevor Lawrence was playing on a half-torn knee. Because, I'm not even going to spend time to go on through the drama of Jacksonville. Maybe we'll do it another day because I have in the past. But it was just one thing after another after another. Well, I've said this about Urban Meyer, and I say it about anybody. If there's chaos wherever you go, you're the common denominator. That's the case with Urban Meyer. And it was something every single week with this team. And so Trevor Lawrence goes from that to not only a Super Bowl winning head coach in Doug Peterson, but I think even more importantly, a guy who's a pretty good quarterback developer. Remember, Nick Foles comes back. Nick Foles won the Super Bowl and outplayed Tom Brady in the game. And Brady was amazing in that Super Bowl. He threw for 500 yards and 3 touchdowns. Brady was amazing. And Nick Foles outplayed him. If you'd have told me that the Eagles would have beaten the Patriots in the Super Bowl, A, I wouldn't have believed you because the Patriots, I remember, were huge favorites coming into that game. But 2, I'd have been like, okay, if they do win, they're going to have, 2-3 takeaways. They're going to pick Brady off a couple of times, maybe force a fumble. Nick Foles isn't going to turn the ball over. They're going to run the football with LeGarrette Blount and Jay Ajayi and Corey Clement. It's going to be okay, control the clock, force New England to turn the football over. No, it was a shootout between Nick Foles and the greatest quarterback of all time. That's in part because of Doug Peterson, right? Developing an offense that was conducive to Nick Foles' strengths. Well, who's to say you can't do that with a guy who's as talented as Trevor Lawrence? So, yes, they get Travis Etienne back from injury. He might as well be a rookie because last year, I think he tore his ACL or Achilles and didn't play last season. Well, he comes back healthy. You bring, Christian Kirk, good signing for him. Jacksonville's made some nice moves in the offseason. Their first overall pick to me was questionable at best. I'd have taken Hutchinson in a heartbeat over the guy, Walker, I think is his name that they drafted. But aside from that, Jacksonville's had a pretty good offseason, especially for them. A dark horse to make the playoffs. I don't know about that. Only if they were in the NFC, yeah, I'd give Jacksonville a shot to make the playoffs because in the AFC, just the West, the whole AFC West could make the playoffs. And if that's the case, Jacksonville's not getting in because then Jacksonville would have to win the division and Indianapolis is a much better team. So they're going to beat the Jaguars out without a question. At that point, it'd be, can Jacksonville, they should be better than Houston, and can they beat out Tennessee? I'm not big on the Titans this year. So then again, I have been big on the Titans the last 2 years, and they've surprised me. That's what Derrick Henry does. He's one of the 10 best players in the league when healthy. But listen, speaking of the NFL, I forgot which survey it was that inspired me to do this last topic on the show. There was a survey that came out the other day that talked about the 10 best quarterbacks in the NFL, and their list wasn't awful. I've seen worse. They had Kyler Murray in there, obviously. They had Dak Prescott in the top 10. They didn't have Derek Carr in the top 10, which I wasn't a huge fan of. They actually had Aaron Rodgers as the best quarterback, which was really confusing to me. As great as he is, man's lost back-to-back playoff games at home. But I was like, okay, I've done my quarterback list ranking the best quarterbacks in the NFL the last few years. This is the third straight year of me doing it. So just to give you a good sort of sense of where I've ranked them. So I did it in 2020, 2021, and this year I'm doing it in 2022. Grady says, where does Baker Mayfield fall into your top 10? Unfortunately, Grady, he does not exist in my top 10. I cannot. There's no way. Even you said, he's at his, even in your opinion, Grady, he's a top 12 to 15 quarterback when healthy. But given the quarterback talent today and given the just garbage season that Baker Mayfield had last season, there's no argument for me to put him in the top 10. But here's my list in 2020. So my 2020 list, the best quarterbacks coming into, so I made this list in the summer of 2020. So from 1 to 10 for the podcast audience, I'll read it for you. I went Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Jimmy Garoppolo, Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray. Okay, so you see the names there. 2021. So I made this one last summer. The number one spot did not change. Patrick Mahomes is still there. But I went Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, and finishing off with Matthew Stafford. And so that was my top 10 last year. Hold on, we got to cut. Yeah. Grady was just messing. Grady was just messing, of course. Yeah. But I got a list again. My top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. Since that list came out, I'm like, you know what? Let's just jump on it, right? I've been doing a lot of rankings lists lately because, it is a slow period in sports, but, that's why I like doing these rankings. So let's go and start it off with number 10, in my opinion, the 10th best quarterback in the NFL, my man, Justin Herbert. Last season, 5,000 yards, 38 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. He had a completion percentage of 66% and a passer rating of 98. Justin Herbert is somebody who I loved. I liked him a lot more than Burrow. I was dead wrong on Burrow. I'll admit that. Don't worry, he'll show up some point in the top 10. But I liked him more than Burrow, and I liked him more than Tua, who I was more of a fan of coming out of the draft. But I love this kid. Size, leadership, massive arm. I mean, to me, Justin Herbert throws the prettiest deep ball in the NFL. If you watch a Chargers game and Justin Herbert loads up and fires down the field, first of all, the throwing motion looks flawless, and the ball disappears from the camera's sight. It goes so high in the air, gets so much arc, and comes down just right into the palms of the wide receiver, whether it be Josh Palmer, my guy out of Tennessee, or whether it's Mike Williams or Keenan Allen. That's what Justin Herbert does. He might as well just run down the field and just hand it to the wide receiver. The deep balls are so perfect. Here's the thing though, he still is yet to make the playoffs. Now last year definitely wasn't his fault. Brandon Staley, still don't know what the heck he was doing at the end of that Vegas game that cost the Chargers a playoff spot. But when you talk about a guy who can make plays with his legs, he's got a big arm, he's accurate, he's an excellent leader for that football team, kind of a quiet guy, but the whole locker room loves him. Justin Herbert is easily in the top 10. He'd be higher had the Chargers made the playoffs, but I would, make no mistake about it, he will be higher in 2023 when I make this list next year. My number 9, my man, say it with me, Rain Dakota Prescott. 4,400 yards, a Cowboys record, 37 touchdown passes, 10 interceptions, completion percentage of 69%, and a passer rating of 104. The two things I've always admired about Dak Prescott is number one, in an organization that is Just loud, loud, loud. There's always something with the Dallas Cowboys. Whether it's a controversy with the player, whether is the coach going to get fired, whether it was Jason Garrett or now Mike McCarthy, or whether it's just coming from Jerry Jones, which the majority of the stories these days are coming from Jerry Jones. I mean, it's always something. The fans, we're going to the Super Bowl every year. It is loud, 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 talking. Dak Prescott has been rock solid. Phenomenal leader for that football team. Is as consistent as they come. And that leads into the second thing I've always admired about Dak. He's gotten better every season. Save for his second year, he didn't have a very good sophomore season in the NFL, but obviously everybody remembers the rookie year, led the Cowboys, 23 touchdowns, 4 picks, had the best touchdown to interception ratio in the league, and led the Cowboys to a 13-3 record, and I think got an MVP vote and won Rookie of the Year. Year 2 wasn't very good. But year 3 on, his passer rating has gone up, as Cardi B said. Passer rating of 97 in 2018, passer rating of 100 in 2019, passer rating stayed at 100 in 2020 in the 5 games he played, and his passer rating, as I mentioned, tied his career best at 104. We're talking about a guy who has an underrated arm. We know he's deadly accurate with the football, can move outside the pocket. I would not call him a running quarterback, even to the extent that Justin Herbert is, but somebody who has taken a good Cowboy team and has lifted them to heights that, let's be honest, they're not capable of even sniffing. You don't believe me? Look at the 2020 Dallas Cowboys without Dak Prescott, and then come back to me. Dak Prescott is, in my opinion, the 9th best quarterback in the NFL. Moving on to number 8, somebody I am almost as big of a fan of as I am Dak Prescott. Somebody who, as I mentioned, on the list that came out of the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL, curiously was not on, made no sense to me. Number 8, Derek Carr. Last season, 4,800 yards, 23 touchdowns, 14 picks, had a completion percentage of 69% and a passer rating of 94. And I'm not sure that we've had many quarterbacks in league history to make the playoffs, because we talked about the issues that Trevor Lawrence, who had a bad rookie year, but a lot of that was because of the chaos around him. I don't think we've had a ton of quarterbacks in NFL history lead their team to the playoffs with the kind of stuff that was seemingly with the Raiders. Again, every single week they had a controversy with their coach and he got fired. They had a tragedy where their wide receiver is now going to spend, Lord knows how much time in prison because of just terrible judgment on his part, costing someone their life. Then you have players getting arrested for DUI. You had another guy who got cut from a team because he was acting a fool on social media, posting, weird stuff. It was something every week. Keep in mind, his interim head coach, a guy I really respect, Rich Bisaccia, had never been a head coach in his life in the NFL. In the second toughest division in football, with all that stuff, Derek Carr has a career year and gets the Raiders to the playoffs. Again, does not have a number 1 receiver. He does now with Devontae Adams, that's for sure. But last year did not have a true number 1 receiver. And still, all the drama got his team to the postseason. Now, he also, like Justin Herbert hasn't even been to the playoffs quite yet. Derek Carr has yet to win a playoff game, but in the Raiders franchise, we're going to really put that a lot on Derek Carr. He had just a tremendous year last year. I said on the show after the regular season concluded, I would have voted him 3rd for MVP behind Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. He'd have been my 3rd, even over Joe Burrow, as great as Joe was. Derek Carr, to me, is the 8th best quarterback in the NFL. Let's go to number 7. The champ is here. Matthew Stafford. Last season, 4,900 yards, 41 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, completion percentage of 67%, and a passer rating of 103. The second that Matthew Stafford gets a well-run franchise. He's in Detroit for 12 years, about as poorly run a franchise as there is in the NFL. Remember, the Lions, in the Super Bowl era, which is now 56 years old, have a single playoff win. 1. Matt Stafford was drafted by that franchise in 2009. He did not win a playoff game. And many out there, to a certain degree, yours truly, criticized him for that. The second he gets a well-run franchise in the Los Angeles Rams, he leads them to the Super Bowl, and they win it over Cincinnati. Again, I read you the 17 interceptions. He's always, throughout the course of his career, the biggest flaw in his game is he's a little reckless with the football. He throws some interceptions. You're like, man, what are you doing? Where were you looking? But you think about the game-winning drive. I mean, the last 3 Rams playoff games were all won in game-winning drives. Against the GOAT, in the GOAT's house in Tampa, he outplayed the great Tom Brady. The NFC Championship against a phenomenal Niners pass rush leads them on a game-winning drive. And then in the Super Bowl, I mean, there's no more pressure in the NFL than the Super Bowl. I'd say in American sports than the Super Bowl. He leads them on a game-winning drive. There's even a no-look pass thrown in there, and he throws the game-winning Super Bowl-winning touchdown to Cooper Kupp. Matt Stafford, who was my number 10 last year because I did think he would succeed with the Rams, but you win the Super Bowl, you're at number 7. If Stafford had won Super Bowl MVP, I might have maybe considered putting him in the top 5, but he's my number 7. He was excellent last season. Number 6, we just got done talking about him. Again, one of my favorite quarterbacks. Loved him since he first came into the NFL. Russell Wilson. 3,100 yards, 25 touchdowns, 6 picks, completion percentage of 65%, and a passer rating of 103. Obviously, we know with Russell, those numbers are deflated a little bit because he only played, or he missed the 2 games. He had the hand injury. The offensive line, again, was a mess. The defense was awful. And so Russell Wilson now comes into a situation in Denver, as I talked about earlier. Receiving core is really good. Offensive line, it's solid. Okay, running game is excellent. Defense is phenomenal. Again, I mentioned 3rd in scoring defense last season. You add an offensive coach, Nathaniel Hackett. Special teams is good. Home field advantage is huge in Denver. And so he comes into a well-run franchise that all they needed is a quarterback. So I think he's going to ball out this season in Denver and put the Broncos in a position where they can maybe go win a Super Bowl. What do we know about Russell Wilson? Again, in Seattle, bad offensive line, average skill position players, terrible defense, an ultra-conservative head coach, and year in and year out, getting the playoffs every single year, seemingly, except for last year when he was injured. So I think Russell Wilson, come seasons in next year, he will be in my top 5. Russell Wilson, currently now, is the 6th best quarterback in the NFL. Number 5, this may be a slightly controversial, Aaron Rodgers, the 2-time back-to-back league MVP. Last season, 4,100 yards, 37 touchdowns, 4 picks, 69% completion percentage, and a passer rating of 112. Again, the back-to-back most valuable player, Aaron Rodgers. We know that he is probably the most gifted thrower of the – maybe Mahomes may have a case, but probably the most gifted natural thrower of the football that we've ever seen play in the NFL. I mean, unlike even Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers makes it look effortless. I mean, we see when he fires the ball down the field, even a little 7-yard slant to Devontae Adams or whoever's his receiver. It's just a little flick of the wrist. Looks effortless. So the talent is out of this world. I've always said it, he is better than Tom Brady, but who's greater? Like, that's a whole different conversation. What demotes him to 5, in my view, is that consistently in the postseason, which is where legacies are made in any sport, certainly football, and definitely with quarterbacks, what do you do when the lights are the brightest? Aaron Rodgers, since that Super Bowl in 2010, has a losing playoff record, 7-9. And most of those 7 wins, I mean, he played a wide receiver playing quarterback when he beat the Vikings in 2012. He beat the Kirk Cousins-led Washington football team, now the Washington Commanders. He beat an injured Jared Goff and an injured Aaron Donald Rams team at home. But when you're playing an equal competition, the Bucs last year, or the Bucs a couple years ago, and then last year, the San Francisco 49ers, again at home. The MVP with Devontae Adams at home. Weather is on your side against a warm weather team. You score 10 points. That can't happen. It can't happen if you're the 2-time league MVP. And so that was demoted. And look, if Aaron Rodgers wins a playoff game, certainly if he gets to the Super Bowl, he's got a strong case to be my best quarterback in the NFL. But I've got him at number 5. But Aaron Rodgers fans, just cool your jets. He's in the top 5. I didn't kick him out. But Aaron Rodgers, to me, is the 5th best quarterback in the NFL. To number 4, somebody I famously was not high on coming out of the draft and could not. I've never been more wrong on anything in the history of carving it up than this man, Joe Burrow, who to me is the 4th best quarterback in the league. Last year, 4,600 yards, 34 touchdowns, 14 picks, a 70% completion percentage, and a passer rating of 103. We know about Joe Burrow that he was drafted by a franchise that isn't exactly known for winning big games. As a matter of fact, the Cincinnati Bengals last year, up until last year, had not won a single playoff game since the first Bush was president in the early 90s. So, since 1991, Joe Burrow not only wins a playoff game, did it against a good Raiders team and a great quarterback in Derek Carr. He goes on the road to Tennessee, okay? He gets sacked a playoff record 9 times and wins the game. He goes to Kansas City in the AFC Championship game, and I'm like, okay, listen, Cincinnati, shockingly great run. Joe Burrow, wow. Great postseason, great regular season. But it ends in Arrowhead, okay? We know about Kansas City. We know their history in the postseason as of late with Patrick Mahomes. You're not winning an Arrowhead. And he won an Arrowhead. Not only did he win an Arrowhead, he was down 21-3 to Patrick Mahomes and won the game. Led a comeback drive in the fourth quarter and in overtime. So, again, you're talking about somebody who has had just about everything go against him since he came into the league. Terrible offensive line. Good. I mean, I like Zach Taylor. Like him. He's not a Sean McVay. Good receivers, good weapons. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, solid running game. Defense, hit and miss. It's got a weak linebacking unit, and special teams can come and go as well, at least up until this season. And in a brutal division with Baltimore and Pittsburgh. He won that division, won 3 straight playoff games, and against a far superior team in the Super Bowl, the Los Angeles Rams. That close to winning the game. If he has an offensive line and Aaron Donald doesn't go crazy, he wins the game. I think he wins the game. And the Bengals win the Super Bowl, which would have just been improbable. I don't think it's even a debate. I consider putting Joe Burrow possibly at 1 or 2, given what he accomplished last season in Cincinnati. But he is, without a question, the 4th best quarterback in the NFL. Number 3, somebody I was high on coming out of college, out of the University of Wyoming. I am talking about Josh Allen. Last season, Josh Allen, 4,400 yards, 36 touchdowns, 15 picks, a completion percentage of 63, and a passer rating of 92. Now, that dropped significantly from his passer rating the year prior of 107. But in a guy in Josh Allen, you're talking about a quarterback who can throw it from where I'm sitting to Cabo San Lucas. The guy has an absolute rocket for an arm. And something I said about Dak Prescott earlier that also applies to Josh Allen. He is somebody who is every year improved, and especially in completion percentage, right? His rookie year, he was 52%. We're like, oh gosh, you gotta be a lot better than 52%. That's barely over Tim Tebow. Then he goes to 58%. Still not great, but it's an improvement. Then he goes to 68%. We're like, oh wow, this guy's amazing. And he finishes in the top 3 for MVP. And last season, Josh Allen in the postseason, Josh Allen for only playing 2 playoff games and starting in the wild card round, had like one of the 2 greatest playoff games ever, given those circumstances. Okay, against the New England Patriots, against a Bill Belichick-led defense, a division rival. They know Josh Allen. They know what he can do. They know the Buffalo Bills offense inside and out. And Josh Allen basically tossed a perfect game. The Bills scored a touchdown on every single drive in the football game. That's how great Josh Allen was. And who could forget one of the greatest games that we've all ever witnessed? Bills-Chiefs. Bills lost that game. Josh Allen was the last reason why. Just went throw for throw for throw with Patrick Mahomes. Throws the touchdown to Gabriel Davis. Again, 4 touchdown passes to Gabriel Davis. Nice receiver. We didn't think he was that good. Josh Allen can do those things with those type of receivers. And puts the Bills up by 3 with 13 seconds left in the game. And we're thinking it's over. But Patrick Mahomes drove him down the field in 12 seconds. They kicked the game-winning field goal and sent it to overtime. Josh Allen did not get to touch the ball in overtime. Chiefs won it. Bills season over. That was my preseason pick at the AFC to get to the Super Bowl. But Josh Allen is just a remarkable talent. The Bills gave him his money last offseason. He deserves every penny. A solid leader in the locker room. Accuracy has gotten better and better every year. Incredibly coachable. Great athlete. 6'6". And he's, again, I've never really seen an arm quite like that of Josh Allen, certainly of modern quarterbacks. He is my number 3. Number 2, somebody I thought we all thought was done. I'm sorry. No, that's number 1. My bad. I spoiled it. Number 2, the guy who Josh Allen lost to, the great Patrick Mahomes, a guy who has been dubbed the young GOAT, comparison to the guy who I've obviously got as my number 1. Patrick Mahomes last season was absolutely remarkable for the Kansas City Chiefs. When you consider coming off a Super Bowl loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last season, in a year where people were like, oh, Mahomes had a down year. Yeah, I will take 4,800 yards, 37 touchdowns, 13 picks, completion percentage of 66, and a pass rating of 98. I'll take that any day of the week as a down year, okay? Patrick Mahomes is somebody who comes into an Andy Reid offense. We understand that. Andy Reid's one of the great offensive play designers of NFL history, really. But he never had the star quarterback. Well, I think it's been fairly established by now. He does now. So you're talking about somebody who's got a rocket arm, not quite that of Josh Allen, but it's incredible. He can throw it 100 yards in the altitude in Denver. Crazy accurate. Now, he can be a little streaky. We understand he went through that slump at midseason. He had some rough games against the Giants and the Cowboys. But then at the end of the season, he gets hot, plays amazing in the playoff game against Pittsburgh, and plays even better against Buffalo. And then he went back into the slump in the second half of their championship game loss to Cincinnati. So it's like he can be a little up and down, a little inconsistent. But in terms of somebody who's just, galvanizing a locker room, keep in mind, this is a guy who 2 years ago was trailing the Houston Texans 24-0 midway through the second quarter. The Chiefs had the lead going into halftime. That's how he's a video game quarterback. He is a touchdown threat on every single play, which we don't see that by most quarterbacks. He is obviously a league MVP back in 2018, a Super Bowl MVP back in 2019, and somebody, I know they lost Tyreek Hill, but this notion that Kansas City is just like totally out of the Super Bowl race, I think is quite exaggerated. I don't quite understand it, to be honest with you, because Patrick Mahomes is the second best quarterback in the league. And y'all know who number 1 is. The greatest quarterback that ever touched a football. Mr. Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr., as one said. Tom Brady last season, 5,300 yards, a career high, with 43 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, completion percentage of 67%, and a passer rating of 102. This is at the age of 44 years old. I've always called Tom Brady, called him last season, I'll call him this season. He is 2 things. He is a cyborg. He was built in a lab. He is not human, and he's the great outlier. Anybody who compares their aging quarterbacks to Tom Brady, stop. It's not fair to the quarterback you're talking about. It's not fair to the franchise. It's not fair to you as a fan base to expect him to be as productive as Tom Brady has been at this stage of his career. Tom Brady, this is a stat that just blows me away. He's now 45 years old. He's just now midway into his 40s. He has more touchdown passes in his 40s than his 20s. He became a starting quarterback, full-time starter in the NFL, age 24. So, 6 years in his 20s. And, 5 years in his 20s. And he has less touchdown passes than he does in his 40s. He's going into year 23. Nobody in sports history, certainly in the history of team sports, has had a longer prime than Tom Brady. Coming back out of a brief retirement, 41 days, coming back to try and lead the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to try and win the franchise's 3rd Super Bowl, and Tom Brady to win possibly 8 Super Bowls. I thought he should have been the MVP last season over Aaron Rodgers. But listen, Tampa Bay is once again going to be a threat next season. They're going to be a problem. And Tom Brady, in my view, still at age going 44, going on 45 in a month, is the best quarterback in the NFL. Happy early birthday, Tom Brady. So here's my list of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, in my opinion, 1 through 10. Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford, Derek Carr, Dak Prescott, and Justin Herbert. That is my top 10. There you go. I love doing these top 10 lists. Love it. I love it. All right, let's see. I got a few comments from Grady. Try to get to at the end of the show. It's almost, wow, it's about to be an hour and a half show. Hey, listen, these ranking lists take some time, but they're fun to do and fun to debate about, especially in the comments. Grady says, legend has it Matthew Stafford took the midnight train quite often during his line days, dreaming of going anywhere. Seriously, though, congrats to him. Still getting used to thinking of him as a Super Bowl champ. Yeah, you're not kidding. I mean, that's the thing. One game. If Matthew Stafford and the Rams lose the Super Bowl to an inferior Chiefs team, to an inferior Bengals team, the narrative on Matt Stafford just continues. Doesn't play well in big games. Remember, he threw a big interception to start the second half of that game against Cincinnati. It's like, oh, there he goes. And I actually tweeted, you guys can find it. It's freezing cold takes. Where you at? But I tweeted, you can take the quarterback out of Detroit, but you can't take the Detroit out of the quarterback. And I'm thinking, oh, he's going to do it again. Game-winning drive in the Super Bowl. There's not a lot of quarterbacks can say they won the Super Bowl. That list goes even smaller when you think about quarterbacks who have won a Super Bowl in a game-winning drive. It's a very short list, and it's certainly the iconic moment of Matt Stafford's career. Like the one throw as of right now that we'll always think about when we think of Matthew Stafford, we'll think of two throws. We'll think of the over-the-top throw over the safety against Tampa Bay to Cooper Kupp, and we'll think about the no-look pass in the Super Bowl to Cooper Kupp. Matt Stafford he's changed his legacy, and he's changed how people view him, and that's a single game can change that. Gray says, I'll never forget watching the Kansas City game. I got home from a trip to Denver, saw the score, and just turned it off. Took a nap, and thought I was dreaming when I woke up and saw my phone notification. Crazy. Yeah, it was. He's talking about the KC Bengals game. He's talking about the Kansas City Chiefs and Cincinnati Bengals. Yeah, because and I tweeted that. Freezing cold takes. I'm still here. I tweeted that when Kansas City went up 21-3 on Cincinnati, I said, hey, look, Bengals, what a year. Nobody expected you to win the division. Matter of fact, most people, including myself, had you finishing last. You won your division. You won 2 playoff games. But Kansas City at home at loud Arrowhead Stadium with Patrick Mahomes, it's just not your day. Like it was a good season. And, it was a good season. It just got better because they beat Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. One of the big shockers, I think, of the NFL season. Grady, come on. Now, see, Grady, we were having a perfectly civil discussion until you commented, Mac Jones will show Josh Allen this year. You talking about the same Mac Jones that against Josh Allen in a game the Patriots won. It wasn't because of Mac Jones. He went 2 for 3 for 13 yards. That Mac Jones? Come on, man. I get you're loyal to the Patriots. And he commented, don't sleep on my Patriots, Bryson. We coming. Listen, I respect that. I respect the Patriots as an organization more for what Tom Brady did for him. But, I respect the fact you're loyal to your team. Love that. But, man, when Mac Jones catches Josh Allen in terms of, like, everybody's like, okay, yeah, he's better than Josh Allen. I don't know. I'll wear a Mac Jones jersey on the show. Like, because he'll beat beat Josh Allen in certain games. But I'm talking about, like, we're 4 or 5 years down the road. We're like, yeah, Mac's better than Josh Allen. And it's not because Josh Allen had like a terrible injury, God forbid, or something like that happen. But no, he's not catching. He's not catching Josh Allen. Gray says, we're ready to be America's team again when Dallas is ready to get that title back. I've always said the Cowboys these days are not America's team because of postseason success by any means. In that case, the Patriots have a great case to be, America's team again. The Chiefs would have a case. I think the 49ers would have a case. Teams that have had recent postseason success. The reason I've always said this, the reason the Dallas Cowboys are America's team is because we're so divided on them. We know, not to bring the temperature down the room, but they're to, mess up the show, but we're pretty divided in America, and the Dallas Cowboys are a perfect representation of that. You love the Cowboys. We're going to the Super Bowl. How about them Cowboys, right? As the great Jimmy Johnson once said, if I can possibly find it down here. Yeah.
How about them Cowboys? Yeah!
How about them Cowboys? We're going to the Super Bowl. Jerry Jones every year. I'd write a blank check to go to the Super Bowl. Or you despise them. Yeah, but you're Stephen A. Smith, right? You make fun of the Cowboys fans crying in the stands during playoff games. The Cowboys are America's team at this point because you love them or you hate them. That's how we are about our politicians, right? Of course, then again, I think the majority of us really don't like our politicians, but you get what I'm saying. You either love the Cowboys or you hate them. That's why they're still America's team. Grady says, crazy stat. Do you think that that's because the game changed at all? Not diminishing my man at all. Love that, man. Are you, I mean, what do you mean the game changed? Are you talking about like Tom Brady or Mac or like, I don't know, like clarify further what you're talking about in the comments. But I mean, if you're talking about the NFL in terms of even just the sport, yeah, the game has definitely changed with some of the rules that have, obviously trying to protect players from head issues, obviously. Quarterback, or the rules have benefited the quarterback position big time. We know with, I remember 2017, there were so many star quarterbacks that got hurt that year. And so like the next season, Roger Goodell, the NFL competitions committee is like, hey, we're going to catch some flack. There's going to be some bad roughing the passers call that we're like, oh, come on. He just, that's not a roughing the passer. That's football. But we want to do whatever we can. We'll take that criticism as long as our quarterbacks, as long as the faces of the league are still playing. Grady said Brady. Okay. He said, do you think that's because the game changed at all? So he's talking, Grady, you're talking about why Tom Brady is still great. Yes, I do think the rule change. I think it'd be, even as a Brady fan myself, I know you're a Brady fan. A lot of people are. I think even the staunchest Brady supporters would have to say, yes, the rule changes have benefited him, right? They've helped him to be able to continue his career to where it is now, playing at age 45. And, people like myself saying he's still the best quarterback in the league. And his team is still a Super Bowl contender. Look, a lot of factors play. The way he takes care of himself, both in, at this point, he said he watches film for fun. Like, that's why I think he has a chance. Not saying he is going to be, but a chance to be a pretty good broadcaster, because Tom loves film. It's part of what's made Tony Romo a great broadcaster. Like, Romo's just a sucker for watching film. So I think Brady could be, maybe more the same. Not saying he's going to be as good as Romo, but you get what I'm saying. Obviously, Tom takes phenomenal care of his body. We know about the TB12 method and all that. But yes, I do think the rule changes have absolutely applied, because if linebackers are allowed to come off the edge, if a Ray Lewis is able to come off the edge, allowed to come off the edge and just smoke Brady, those hits are going to add up. But also, I think Brady deserves credit in this regard, going back to his early days in New England. Like, he's the very anti-Brett Favre in this instance, in that Brett this is part of what hurt Andrew Luck to a certain degree, even though he had a terrible offensive line. Brett Favre would hold the ball and looking for the home run. Tom's like, I'll take what the defense gives me. He is the epitome of take what the defense gives you. And even to this day, he's that way. So I think that also, getting the ball out of your hands quick before the pass rusher can get there, that has extended his career. Look, there's a lot of factors, but yes, I do think, some of the rule changes have factored. All right. Did not think the show would go an hour and a half today, but we had a lot to talk about, and I love doing these lists of top 10 this, top 10 that, and certainly quarterbacks. We're like 2 weeks away from training camp. We are like that close. Can't wait. Grady says, I hope when he retires and goes over to Fox, he goes on Undisputed. That would be a fun show. That would be amazing if Tom Brady went on Undisputed, because we know there is no bigger fan of Tom Brady in the media than Skip Bayless, and it's not even close. And Shannon has been more critical than most. He doesn't dislike Tom, but he's been more critical of most of the guy in terms of his play and in terms of certain decisions he has made in terms of how he handled the retirement and all that. But that would just be awesome. I hope so. That would be incredible. Like, I feel like Tom would almost want to go on the show for that reason. That'd be fun. All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by as always. Be sure to catch Carving Up Live on Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. Also, be sure to listen to the Carving Up podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. Again, we are so close to the NFL season. We're almost there. Almost there to training camp. Preseason's a month away. Regular season is actually opening Sunday is exactly 2 months from today. So we're close on the NFL season. We're even closer to college football. So have a great week, everybody. See y'all on Thursday night. God bless you all. Peace out. Dak's still that guy, though. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button and go check out the other clips and full shows of Carving It Up Live. Have a blessed day.